Dr. Dave here. There's been a lot of information going out there right now about children's hospitals being overwhelmed, an early RSV season, along with an enteroviral season that ran late, and then rhinoviruses are kind of out and about like they normally are, and it's also time for parainfluenza. And with all of those viruses happening about the same time, a lot of children's hospitals are at their capacity. And really, there's nothing terribly unusual happening in terms of each of these illnesses. It's not common for them to overlap at this time of year. Typically, RSV doesn't get going until December, January, February, and there's been a big surge here in the middle of the fall. So when you look at the RSV numbers, the a number of cases isn't terribly unusual compared to other years. It's just that when this surge is happening now. And so there's a big concern that if the RSV season lasts into the flu season, if this peak doesn't go down like it would normally go down, if it stays up or continues to escalate, then there's a concern that we overlap with flu. We have some new Omicron COVID variants that are circulating around out there. And so everybody's talking about, not just for pediatric patients, but for the adult population as well, having what they're referring to as a tripledemic, where you have COVID surge, RSV surge, and flu surge all happening at the same time. Now, RSV is a virus that infects the lining of the small airways of the lungs, called bronchioles. This is why we call it bronchiolitis, and not bronchitis, but bronchiolitis, because it goes to these smaller airways. And it causes a lot of mucus and debris to form in the airways, a lot of coughing, maybe even some wheezing, especially in the younger patients. And we all get this disease. It's just that for children outside of the age of 2 or 3, otherwise healthy teens and adults, it usually doesn't cause much problems but a bad winter cold. On the other hand, for very young infants, children with chronic respiratory illnesses, especially those that may have some respiratory issues along with some cardiac issues, the immunosuppressed and elderly adults, RSV can really cause problems. Very young infants frequently end up in the hospital, sometimes even the intensive care unit. And unfortunately, at this time, we don't have a vaccine or even a drug that has been known to routinely treat it. In fact, the general message to parents is, even though they're wheezing, albuterol doesn't help, steroids don't help, antibiotics don't help, antivirals don't help, and we don't have a vaccine, all of these things make RSV very difficult. And so I think it's really important to be thinking about the fact that we do have 2 of these 3 potential illnesses that we have vaccines for. And while COVID hasn't shown to be really detrimental in large numbers to children, I mean, there are some pediatric deaths and hospitalizations, and we have this syndrome where it causes a multi-system organ failure, but the total numbers of these are very, very small compared to what it does in the older adult population. But we do have to kind of think about the fact that if we have a season where we're getting hit with flu, RSV, and COVID simultaneously, that the additive effects of those 3 illnesses together may be more than the sum of their parts. And so really need to be thinking hard about vaccination for both flu and COVID in eligible children this year. Because since we can't treat the RSV, we don't want it coming in on top of one of the other 2, if not all 3 together. Whatever we're seeing right now in terms of hospital overload in some of these centers, it could be really bad. So for the most part, I just wanted to give this out here so that we could kind of talk about RSV and what it is, as well as what this tripledemic is, but also just sort of my plea to, give a real thought about doing both the COVID and the flu vaccines for eligible children this year. Get the children as protected as possible. These vaccines are safe. We have a lot of data now, especially on the COVID vaccine. Kids are doing just fine with it. And even though some people argue that because kids are not severely affected, maybe it's overkill, but with these other viruses looming, let's protect them as much as we can. So that's my plea to you. I hope you're having a great day. Remember, it's never a wrong idea to do as much social distancing, sanitizing, maybe even some mask wearing as we get into this viral season, just to protect yourself as much as possible. Um, it never hurts. It might help. Have a great day, everybody.